Out here, the woods don't lie. Every trail tells a story, and we're here to read it. This is the Field Days Podcast, where passion meets habitat. Hosted by Jason Say, whitetail enthusiast and food plot guru. Brought to you by Magnet Outdoors Premium Food Plot Seeds, because big bucks start with a well-planned strategy.
Hello and welcome to the Field Days Podcast. I have a great guest here with me. If you listen to my last podcast, I was super excited to make the big announcement of Magnet Outdoors, and Wilson and Steve Scott were my guests and partners in what we're doing. But Magnet Outdoors really started all with two guys initially, and that's my guest today. I have Josh Lesniak here. Josh, welcome to the show.
Hey, thank you, Jason.
Yeah, and Josh and I have been friends for a long time. We were friends before we were business partners, and we're going to get into kind of how it all started and how Magnet Outdoors came about. So, Josh, we're going to just take a quick break here, thank a couple of our sponsors, and we're going to be right back, and we're going to talk about how it all got started. But then we're going to get into the importance of soil samples, understanding soil samples, what we're doing at Magnet Outdoors as far as soil samples. So it's going to be a great informative show. So again, Josh, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Jason.
Yep. And we'll take a quick break, thank a couple of our sponsors, and be right back.
I am happy to announce a brand new sponsor here at the Field Days Podcast, and it is 12 Point Hunting Blinds. And I've had the privilege of hunting out of these blinds for the last couple of years, and I was on a property consult earlier this year, and I asked my client what he did for a living, and he said he was one of the owners of 12 Point Hunting Blinds, and my eyes lit up, and I said, we need to talk. And we need to talk because these are the best blinds that I have ever hunted out of. They've thought of every little detail, from just the silent technology, the easy access, and I truly believe that their blinds are completely scent proof. I've so many times had deer directly downwind that never smelled us. So I encourage you, check them out, find out for yourself. But again, hands down, best hard-sided hunting blind I've ever hunted out of. For more information on all their blinds, visit 12pointhuntingblinds.com. I plant over 30 acres in food plots every single year, and I cannot afford to be losing time with equipment that is not reliable or gets the job done. And I'm proud to have Coons Engineering as my equipment sponsor here at Field Days. Their equipment is built like a tank, from their mower that I can create a new plot to mow my perennial plots, to their cultipackers, to the chisel plow that you see me using all the time that I use with just my quad to break ground and plant new food plots. If you're looking for good quality food plot equipment, I encourage you, check out the very best at KUNZENG.com.
All right, Josh, we are back. And again, today's topic, we're going to really, as far as I try and have a very educational aspect every show. And today what we're going to talk about is soil samples, the importance of soil samples, what we're doing different at Magnet Outdoors, and just how important we think it is. But before we get into that, I did want to talk a little bit about kind of how it all got started, right? And you and I started talking, and Josh and I, every year I try and take a kid hunting, and Josh and I have been friends. Josh owns several, if I say anything wrong, Josh, tell me. Josh owns several feed stores and other businesses that, I get all my lime and fertilizer for, the last 15 years from. So Josh is used to seeing me. We've been, I could certainly acquaintances, and I'd say, casual friends or whatever. But, I was looking for a kid to take hunting the one year, and I knew Josh had a little boy. I'm like, hey, why don't we go hunting? And I got to see his son Payson get his first deer, and it was a pretty awesome experience. We got to spend some time in the blind and really get to know each other. And Josh and I are just so like-minded, kind of our backgrounds and how we got into business, and the hardships we had to go through. Just really kind of crazy how they all really aligned, and we just became friends, and then it kind of went from there. And I started thinking about doing a seed company, and Josh is an extremely successful business guy. He's been in the seed side of things for a long, long time. And Josh was my first call. I said, hey, Josh, what do you think? And it didn't take him very long. I don't even know if I said, why don't you think about it? And I think you said at the phone call, hey, I'm in.
Yeah, I answered you right away. It took about 10 seconds. I'm like, well, it's right in my wheelhouse. I've been in it almost 25 years now in the seed side of the business. And I'm like, yes, this is exactly what I wanted to do. And I think between the two of us, that's what we decided, that it would work with my side of the seed and your side of being able to what you've already done in your career path, it made a lot of sense to both of us.
Yeah. And, and I'll never forget, if anybody hasn't seen that hunt, with Josh and his son Payson, Payson about came out of his skin. And the cool thing is Payson's hooked on hunting, right? Like he absolutely loves it. Yeah. And he shot it off one of my food plots.
Yes. Yeah, you did. Yeah. He missed once or twice, I remember. And the third time we went out, so we sat in the stand for almost 16 hours. We got to really know each other. So I think that's when we really decided that, okay, this might work. And then 3 years later, that's when we decided to start Magnet.
Yeah, that's right. I remember he only missed once. The second time,
once,
he missed the first time. Then the second time we had a deer and we couldn't get a shot. And then the third time was a charm. But you're right. We got to spend a lot of time in the blind just talking, and that was before, I even had the concept, right? I wasn't even really thinking along those lines. But when I did start thinking along those lines, I'm like, you know what? I'm going to call Josh because, we just complement each other so well. And, I'm a lot on the, the marketing side of it, the, kind of the going out and planting them and filming and Josh is on that seed side. And, there's a whole component that goes into that. It's just a perfect fit. And, I'm so excited for Magnet Outdoors. I know everybody, hears me talk about it. We've been working on, what did you say it was? You said it to me the other day. You said, what was it, 18 months ago that we first had this conversation? I said, it feels like 4 because, man, it flew by. But yeah, it's been a long time.
It's flown by. But yes, it's all of 18 months.
That's right. Yep. So that's kind of how that all kicked off and got started. And, and you heard on my last podcast, obviously, Josh and I have the awesome, I don't know what the right word to say here is, but having Wilson and Steve Scott involved in this as well, just, man, rounds this team out to, there's nobody with more experience in this business at all. Wilson and Steve, they were the first ones to ever do food plots. They've developed the best selling food plot seed ever sold, the highest selling food plot seed. And, and it's because the stuff they've designed, it works. It's awesome blends. And so to have them and Josh, man, it's a great team, and it makes business a lot of fun. We're it's a lot of work, but we're having a lot of fun at the same time. So anyway, I'll stop rambling about Magnet Outdoors, Josh, and we'll move on and talk about what our goals are at Magnet. And I've always said, Josh, my goal's pretty easy when I started this. And I've had some people ask me, well, and there's a lot of food plot seed companies out there. And I said, listen, I wouldn't be doing it. And I agree. There's good seed companies out there, and there's guys that are just ordering seed and throwing it in a bag. But you're the same way as me. I wouldn't be doing this if I didn't think I could do it better. And I have a 100%. Lot of time. I have a lot of time to sit in the stand and watch deer and play with different blends, research our seeds. There's been a lot of time and effort that's went into it. And, we're out there not only in the field testing, but also using university research to look at our seed blends and what we're doing. We're doing a lot of things that a lot of guys aren't. And that's just, I'll let you talk about what your goals. We all have different goals, but my goal is to create the best premium food plot seeds that are available to guys. And, with the ones we have coming out, we've done that. And in my opinion, obviously I'm biased, but we put a lot of research and things into what we're doing. And at the end of the day, my ultimate goal is, I want to see you guys put big bucks on the wall and meat in the freezer, because that's what it's about. That's what I'm about. That's how I judge my food plots is, how much did the deer like it? And, and are they holding deer on my property, and am I killing deer and putting bucks on the wall and meat in the freezer? So, Josh, I'll let you talk a little bit about that, but that's been pretty easy for me, what my goals are with Magnet.
Yeah, I think I'm pretty much the same. I think with the knowledge that we have and the research we've done with the blends, and I'm super excited about the 2 other blends we have and more coming out in the future. We can't talk about them right now, but I am super excited about those.
Yeah.
We got a lot of research on that, a lot of time and trial and error. And I think with like you said, just trying to be able to pass on our research, our knowledge, what we've learned throughout the last decades.
Yep.
Between the 4 of us, and
That's
just be able to, help other guys out. We've kind of done the leading. I wouldn't say leading the way, but we've done the research, we've done tasks of what we needed to do that not everybody can do on the day to day, like we are doing, and just try to pass that along through Magnet.
Yeah. Somebody said to me the other day, they said, man, there's so many seed companies because there's not as many financial barriers anymore when a guy can order seed, throw it in a bag. Tell you what, you and I spent a lot of money so far, I mean, just doing it the right way. And so it's a big difference between, and again, I'm not saying this and I don't want to badmouth competition, but there are, companies out there that say, hey, seed is seed. And, they call up a seed company and say, hey, send me this many pounds of, of radish and kale and rape and oats and, whatever it might be. And they'll mix up a bag and that's what they sell. We've went out and tested, I think 15 to 20 different Ladino clovers against each other, for 2 years now, to every condition we can think of to see what performs the best. What do the deer like the most? All of our, we don't just get, hey, send me brassicas, send me this, we're testing many, many different ones against each other to say, hey, what's the best? So anyway, enough about that. Now I want to move in, and that takes us into the next segment of, we talked about our goals, and our goal was to be better, and what are we doing different? And one of the things, and it's the main topic we're talking about today, that we're doing different, we're offering soil samples on our website. Now there's a bunch of different places that offer soil samples. What's different with us is you're not going to find it any more reasonable than what you find anywhere else on the internet. We're doing full laboratory soil tests at our lab here in Pennsylvania. Like I said, it's a full laboratory soil test that you can buy, at other food plot seed companies. It's the, exact same results you're going to get, same kind of test. But the difference in what we're doing is we're offering it for $7.95. And that's almost as low as what we can get. And, you and I have had this conversation, and this is what we're going to talk about today is we feel soil samples are so important that, we're not looking at that as a moneymaker for us. We're looking at that as, we know if a guy, the only way Josh and I and Magnet and Wilson and Steve are going to be successful is if you're successful, right? If a guy gets our seed and it doesn't grow for him, regardless if it's our fault or not, right? You get blamed. If somebody puts a seed in and they didn't get rain for 8 weeks, a lot of times they're still going to blame us. Oh, that seed didn't grow for me. Well, what happened? Well, I didn't have rain for 2 months. Well, that might have something to do with it, right? But at the end of the day, what we try to do is take all the variables that we can out. And that starts with the soil sample. And it's really, and we feel it's that important. It's like, hey, we're not going to use this to make money. This is so important to us that we want guys to do it. We don't want financial reasons to be a barrier or a reason that a guy won't go do a soil test. So, you're seeing soil tests out there, $10, $14, $15, same test. And we're offering ours for $7.95. So I just wanted to touch on that again, something that we're doing different here at Magnet Outdoors and everybody else, but it's how important we feel soil tests are for a guy who wants to take every possible variable that he can and have the best opportunity at being successful.
Yeah, and we look at it as our other business where we sell the fertilizer and the lime and the herbicides, is it's kind of the directions to your land. Like, you don't buy anything without directions to put it together. So a soil sample is the directions to your land. And once you get that, you can be able to basically make a plan for that parcel or the parcels that you want to be able to put your annuals, your perennials, and then build like a 2-3 year plan with that soil samples.
Yeah, I agree. And that'll lead right into the next thing that I really wanted to talk about is, so if a guy's sitting here and he's listening to Josh and I talking, and he's on the edge of whether he wants to soil sample or not, and it always amazes me. Now, I'll agree 100%. When I first started, give me 1 second. I'm going to close my email browser here so I don't get any dings. Give me 1 second. I had a ding earlier and I'm like, oh yeah, it's because my email browser's open. So it always amazes me, the guy who will spend $100 on seed. He'll spend $100 on fertilizer and $200 on lime, but he won't spend $7.95 on a soil sample, right? Like, I just
actually, it's like 2 gallons of gas. It took him probably longer to get there.
Yeah,
it cost more to get there than what it did for the soil sample.
That's right. You have the equipment involved, whether you have a 4-wheeler or a tractor or, or whatever it is, a drill or a disc or, you have thousands of dollars, a lot of times wrapped up into planting food plots. And it's got, I just don't want a soil sample. And I always kind of scratch my head and it's like, dude, and so what I tell guys with the soil sample is this. If you're not doing it, you're thinking about it the wrong way. I've been planting food plots for 18 years in the same food plots. And guys will say all the time, I know my soil, I know my dirt. Well, no, you don't. Like I never know from year to year is this going to need lime? Is this what fertilizer is this going to need based on what I'm planting? I don't know that. I'm not even close. Even if I guess, I'm like, oh, I bet this one, I can say sometimes, hey, the pH was really good on this last year. I'll bet you it's going to be pretty good next year. You're safe on some of that stuff, but a lot of times, like understanding your fertilizer needs or when you actually need to add lime at, after you've got that pH up, maybe in year 4, year 5, you need to add some more lime, whatever. You don't know that. So a guy will just say, I see it all the time on our Facebook group. Oh, I just put 20, 20, 20 down. Well, dude, you might be planning something that you need 0, 46, 0. So literally you put 19, 19, 19 down, you've wasted 2/3 of that bag, right? Like you paid money for 2/3 of that bag you didn't need, and guys will judge it because, oh, my food plot grew. It was okay, but it maybe wasn't as palatable. It maybe didn't grow as well as it should have, which I'm betting it didn't because it didn't have the right fertilizer. It takes all the guesswork out of it, and for me, it's just the logic of guys when I see this of how they fight soil samples. Now, I'll tell you this, Josh, like you've been in the seat, so you've probably seen it on the customer side, but I've been dealing with this battle for 18 years. And I can tell you over those 18 years, I feel like me and other guys have made a lot of progress because now when I see somebody go in and say, hey, what should I plant? What should I put in here? And there'll be 20 comments, what's your soil sample say? What's your soil? It didn't used to be that way 18 years ago. Guys would be like, so now more and more guys are
ag soil samples. What is more of a row crop guys that did the soil.
That's right. Yeah, that's right.
Food plotters of the world.
Yeah, and we're seeing the pendulum, swing this way where
great.
More guys are understanding the importance of a soil sample, and that that's just what I hammer home all the time. And I can tell you, at Magnet, we're going to pride ourselves on our customer service, and we're going to answer the phone, in business hours. If we get somebody after business hours, call them back the next day. That's going to be really important to us. But I'm just going to tell you, if you call me and you say, hey, my plot didn't grow, what maybe why didn't it grow? And the first question I'm going to ask is, what's your soil sample say? Well, I didn't take one. Well, man, that makes it really hard for us, right? It could be so many different reasons, maybe this level wasn't good or your pH was bad or like who knows, there's just so many different potential causes that it makes our job really hard and we won't be able to help you as well as we can. Now, when we get a guy that calls and says, okay, I took my soil sample, I'm going to send it to you. pH was perfect. It was 6.5. We got rain. We did that. Now we got to figure something out, right? Now we have some place to start. But if you don't have that soil sample, man, that makes it really hard to help you. And I see guys all the time on the Facebook group, hey, anybody have any idea why maybe my food plot didn't grow? And the guy, well, maybe this, and a lot of guys, well, what's your soil sample say? Well, I didn't take one. Well, man, that's hard to tell then. So that's just kind of my soapbox, Josh. I'll let you chime in on, if you have anything to add on just the logic, the way guys should think about it and the importance of taking a soil sample. If you really want to get to the point where, there's the guys out there that food plotting it's a hobby for them. They don't want to make it a job. They want it to be as easy as possible. They maybe don't even want to spray gly or have a weed kill. They just want to go out, disc once, throw some seed down, and whatever grows. If that's you and you don't care about the end result as much, cool, man. Don't take a soil sample, right? But to me,
that we doesn't still help you at Magnet. It's just we will probably ask you, did you take one?
Yeah, that's right. We're going to say, well, here's the blend I would plant because I have no idea what your pH is, and this one does a little bit better in lower pH and things like that. But to me, I never understood that logic, though, for the guy who actually does spend money on fertilizer, does spend money on decent seed, has the equipment. why not do a $7.95 soil sample, right? Like, it's going to take you.
Clearly we priced them so we really want people to do it. Like, I mean,
that's
we
right.
priced them to make sure that everybody has a soil sample available for $7.95 across the country. Like, we want to make sure that we can help you be successful.
That's right. That's right. Because that $7.95, I can guarantee you it may potentially save you money. Now, like if you're a guy and you're saying, okay, I'm putting a brand new food plot in and I'm not spending more than this, and you put that new food plot in, it may call for 3,000 pounds of lime per acre the first year. And you're like, I'm not doing that. I don't want to spend that kind of money. And I always tell guys, if you can, bite the bullet, do what the soil sample calls for, because you're kicking the can down the road, right? Like
for what fertilizer and lime and the seed's going to cost, most guys are going to spend at least $200 per food plot. That's a small food plot.
That's right.
That's 4% of your plot.
Yep.
The $7.95. So for 4% of your plot, you can get the directions to put your other 96% of your value into your plot.
That's right. And you're gonna lay in your bed at night when you're thinking about your food plot, like I do. I wonder if my food plot's thinking about me right now, right? And you're sitting there and you're wondering. You're not gonna wonder, okay, did I use the right fertilizer? I wonder what my pH is. I wonder if it's gonna grow. I went out, I did that work. So anyway, that's just kind of.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
Yeah.
Nope.
I also think in the history of what I've seen in the last 25 years, I think guys kind of maybe get overwhelmed with the analysis. And the nice thing about Magnet is you have us now that you can call and we can help you through. As long as you have a soil sample, we have the experts right behind us. We have another group of guys behind us that are able to answer the phone calls and our questions with us at Magnet. So. Yep. If you guys have the soil sample, we can definitely figure out or find the people that can actually help you.
That's right. That's right. Yeah, I agree. And what I'll say too, though, is, and after you use them a couple times and you look at them, they maybe are not intuitive the first time you look at them, but after you use them a couple years, they're super easy, Yes, and we're going to talk about later. I mean, literally, I've been doing this 18 years and I look at three main things. What my pH is, how much lime do I need, and how much fertilizer. It's going to tell you exactly.
We designed these to be simplistic.
That's right.
We've got the right. We wanted to get the N, P, and K, the pH, the CEC, the calcium carbonate equivalencies, and the organic matters.
That's right.
Matter. So we simplify these to be able to make sure that everybody can read them or just be able to call us.
That's right. That's right. And so let's move on then. So I think we've beat a dead horse here with the importance. I can't stress it enough. If you're serious about food plotting and you want to be as honestly, a soil sample is your number one thing, in my opinion, that you can do to ensure a better opportunity at being successful food plotter. So that's it. And we're going to move on. I want to talk a little bit about, just real quick before we get into getting your soil sample through Magnet, how you do it. It's maybe a little bit different than what guys have done before. But I see a lot of, and I'm hitting you with this a little bit later. I didn't tell you this in the beginning, but I did want to touch base on it. I see a lot of guys that are saying, okay, I can buy this pH meter, that I can go stick in the soil and I can get my pH, and that is as good as getting a laboratory soil sample. And what I can tell you is, I've never used one of those, but I've read a lot of research on them. I have a lot of guys that I really respect that I've talked to at length about this. And I don't know if you have an opinion on them or not, but I'll just give you mine just based on the guys that I really respect in this industry that are a lot more scientific than I am. pH meter is not the way that you want to go. It's a shortcut. Maybe sometimes it might be somewhat accurate on just giving you your pH, but it's never going to give you all your levels. It's not going to give you near as much detail, and it's not near as accurate. And we're going to talk a little bit about how we do soil samples, and we sample from the entire plot. You're going to get in one pH from a certain area of a plot, and you really need to do it differently. But that is one thing I wanted to touch on, because I've been seeing more and more of that where guys are like, hey, can I just use one of these pH meters instead of buying soil samples? The answer is you can, but I would advise you not to. And I don't know if you have any opinion on pH meters or you've seen anything about them or not.
I have seen them. I've never personally used one. I've just always soil sampled. I guess if you would want to use that one, I think I would still do a test for $7.95. I would probably do still a soil sample and then test the pH meter in the same areas that you did that, if that's what you want to do. I really don't have a lot of history. I don't have any history with those.
Yeah. I don't either. I've never used one either. It's just been because I've always, again, like I'm not a scientist, but I have a lot of scientist friends who are like, absolutely not. It's not the way to go. You don't want to.
And also, you only get the pH. You have no
That's
fertility.
Right.
There's no fertility program at all with those.
Yeah, and you're not going to get your recommendations of exactly. You're going to then have to figure out off my pH is 5.9. Okay, well, what do I need? And there are guys that can figure that out from a line perspective, but then what fertilizer do I use specifically with what blend that I'm planning and things like that? So they're very limited. My recommendation is no on the pH meters. At least where the technology's at now. Will something crazy come along in 5 years? I don't know. Maybe AI will go on the ground and give you a full analysis eventually. I mean, AI is doing everything else. So who knows? But at this point in time, I'd 100% recommend a laboratory soil test over a pH meter. So now let's talk about getting your soil sample through Magnet Outdoors. And we've tried to make this process as easy as possible. I've had everything, 18 years ago, we weren't using it. We were using kits, right? It came with a bag. It came with the form that you filled out, and you put the dirt in the bag and, filled out the form and sent it in. We went completely online. This is another thing that helps us to keep costs down, that we're not, buying a whole kit and sending it to you and all that kind of stuff. But we've really simplified the process. And make sure you tell me if I miss anything here. But all a user needs to do is go to the Magnet Outdoors website at magnetoutdoors.com. There's a soil sample button right at the top nav, or if you're on mobile, on the hamburger, you'll see a drop down. And you go there and there's a nice video on exactly all the instructions, step by step, how to print out your form, print out your receipt, then go take your soil sample, how to send it in the lab, what address to send it to. We have a PDF instruction form of exactly how to do it. But we feel like we've made it as easy as we possibly can, that you'll just get that through the website. You'll go purchase that form. We call it a soil sample submittal form. You'll print that out and you'll go take your soil sample, and then you'll fill that form out, and you'll fill out things like your name, your address. Is it an existing field? Are you maintaining an existing, is it a new plot or is it an existing plot? You're going to have things in there like, we'll want your email address, because we'll email you these results. And this is one thing that's awesome about, the lab is you're going to get, if you pick email, you're going to get your results emailed to you within 2 business days after the lab gets it. So there's a really quick turnaround of getting the results on your soil samples through our lab here in Pennsylvania. But yeah, I mean, it's a really simple process. So, you just, like I said, you go to magnetoutdoors.com, you click it, you're going to buy the soil sample. You can, if you have 5 different plots, you need to do 5 different soil samples. So you'd purchase 5 of them there. But whatever you need, but really simple process. It's all online. And the one thing I will tell guys that they need to do is make sure that you include your receipt with the soil sample submittal form attached to the soil sample, so we can see proof of purchase. But all those instructions are in there, and it's really, really simple process, especially after you do it one time.
Yeah, and actually, when you print it out, if you're in the field and you forget how to take the soil sample, there's going to be a QR code on there. It'll take you right to the sample video and how to take a soil sample. Yeah. And the other thing I want to say is, please be legible when you're writing down all the information. So
that's right.
You back your information that you paid for.
Yeah, that's right. If like when you write these in the lab, we'll have problems if you picked email address to get your results and we can't understand your writing on your email address. Guess what? You're going to be calling us and saying, "Hey, I sent my soil sample in 2 weeks ago and I haven't got my results." I'm going to call the lab and say, "Yeah, we couldn't read his email. We must have sent it to the wrong email." So you do need to write very legible on there so that we can get you your results. But that's a really good point, Josh.
Yeah.
Yep. So anyway, so that's the process. And now what I want to get into is something that, is we talked a little bit about earlier, and that is how to read your soil sample results. Is the different things that you're going to see on there. So I'm going to pull up I have one of them, and I'm gonna pull up the things that you're going to go through. So, when you get your soil sample results, it may seem a little bit overwhelming at first, right? You're gonna look at it and be like, if you're like me, what the heck is all this? But it is really simple, and I'll be just 100% upfront. The main things that most guys are looking for, you're going to look for that pH number, what that pH is, and then what's the recommended fertilizer and what's the recommended lime. That's the three main things that you're going to be looking at on this soil sample form. Now there's organic matter, and that's a whole different subject that we can talk about. It has the different levels, and there might be an issue if your, calcium is sky high, way off the charts, or something like that. Why is it like this? What can we do? Is this bad or is this good? And things like that. So there might be some simple questions like that. But in my opinion, the main things you're looking at is the pH, then what we make it simple on what the recommended lime and the recommended fertilizer is.
Yeah, it will have the nitrogen, the phosphorus, and the potash. The NP and K is how it'll probably come over, and that'll be, and it might suggest 4 different types of fertilizer. So say it suggests 400 pounds of triple 10, like it would be 10, 10, 10, or 200 pounds. And if your feed seed dealer doesn't have that, you could use half the grade of triple 19 at 200 pounds.
That's right.
Do the math, and like you said, you can always call Magnet, and we can help you out with that. But there's also different variations of fertilizers. There's pretty much, I custom fertilizer 5,000 acres a year in the ag side. Anything, but normally your feed seed dealers will stock like a 10, 10, 10, a triple 19, a 10, 20, 20. And some guys will have like an 0060, which is your potash, or your 4600. The other one to get your phosphorus is like 1152.0. Or an 0460, but we haven't been able to get that lately in the last 5 years. Just aren't making that as much plentiful. Other parts of the country might have it, but in the Northeast, we have not been able to get that.
Yeah. Fertilizer, and I do want to get into that. One thing I did want to touch on before I forget, and this is important. When you get your soil sample submittal form, you can pick 2 different products. And guys will ask me a lot of times what they should pick. And for me, pick what you want to plant. Like if you're saying, I want to plant, trifecta, okay, so absolutely pick that. And a lot of times what I like to do, say it's a smaller plot, it's a eighth of an acre or whatever, and I want to plant trifecta, but you know what? I know that it's a new plot and my pH might not come back where I need it to be. Maybe I'm going to mark Simply Scatter then as well. That's a blend that does a little bit better in low pH. But 90% of the time, what I do is, I love to have, if I have a 1/4 acre plot or bigger, I'm splitting it in half, and I'm putting half in a perennial and half in an annual. So like half I'd have in Founders Blend, which is our clover chicory. The other half I'd have in trifecta. So on that soil sample, I mark Founders Blend North and I mark trifecta. So then you're going to get the results back for both, right? So it's going to tell you, okay, here's how much, here's the fertilizer, because what you need as far as fertilizer for a chicory and clover is probably going to be very different than what you need for trifecta. So now you'll see exactly which fertilizer to spread on each section of that food plot, if that makes sense. Did I explain that, Josh?
I think you did, yeah. And it'll be broken out onto that soil. The sample that comes back, that will be broken out onto there.
That's right.
Founders North and per trifecta.
Yeah. So if you have trifecta in half, you go with the recommendations on that half, and you have Founders on the other half, then you go with the recommendations for Founders, which is our perennial blend. So that's just something I did want to point out. And I get that question a lot. Like, what should I put on this soil? I'm planting this, but I can pick 2. Well, I always pick 2. And if you're like, well, I know my pH is going to be pretty good, and I need trifecta, I'm still going to mark a perennial then, like I just want to know, okay, things might change, what I think I'm doing in the spring, and we frost seed, and it's like, man, none of my frost seed really took, and I don't have a lot of perennials. I want to change what I'm planting here now, so now you can do that. You have the recommendations for that. So just something to consider when you're marking your 2 different, crops that you can get recommendations for. So it is a nice feature getting the recommendations for 2 different ones. And you started talking a little bit about this, Josh, and what I want to do is really break down now somebody understanding. Let's start with the lime, right? So, on here first, you'll see the lime recommendations of what it is. And, it might say you need 2,000 pounds of lime per acre for you to get your pH to that 6.5 that you're looking at. First of all, I tell guys with lime, you want to spread it, 4 or 5 months, as soon as you can in the spring, you want to get your lime in the ground. I tell guys sometimes that's hard, especially if we're planting new plots and you look and you see 3,500 pounds of lime per acre. And they're like, ooh, and I remember this when I first did it. And I kind of cut corners. I'm like, well, I'll put 1,000 pounds on. I'll do, all you're really doing is kicking the can down the road, I tell you, if you can do it, if you can afford it, just do what the soil sample tells you to do. When I started doing that, when I stopped fighting my soil samples and just started saying, okay, this sucks, but it's what I need to do for the long term, man, I started to be a lot more successful, planting food plots when I did exactly what it said. So if you can at all afford it, do what it says. And we'll talk, and I'll let you talk a little bit about this too. So lime, this question comes up a lot. So the lime recommendations that are going to be on there are going to be for ag lime. And I would tell guys, my opinion on lime is, if you have your choice between lime or Pell or other options, ag lime is my opinion the best. It's going to last a little bit longer. It takes a little bit longer to correct the pH, but it's going to last longer for you. But a lot of times what I found, ag lime is a real pain. I'm planting small food plots on the top of a mountain. It's very difficult to get to. So I use a lot of Pell lime. And so people ask on that soil sample, if the recommendation is for ag lime, is it 1-to-1? If it says 1,000 pounds of ag lime, do I need 1,000 pounds of Pell lime? The answer to that, and there's a lot of difference out there. But again, I've worked with a lot of guys that I really respect, and this is what I've always went with. I've always went with 80% for Pell. So if your soil sample says you need 1,000 pounds of lime on your food plot, that's talking about ag lime, then if you're going to use Pell instead, you only need 800 pounds. And that's what I've always went with. I know, Josh, you've talked about working in the seed industry. You've heard guys recommend as low as 50% for Pell lime.
Yeah, and I think the 50 to 80%, you're still getting the lime value, I guess.
Yeah.
Also, the lime is the cheapest element of the fertility program. Lime is less money than any of the NP and K. So if you're gonna need to, we always recommend guys to, like, if you have a budget, which we all have a budget more for the lime, because you're gonna raise your pH to let the fertilizer that you are applying be able to work better.
Yeah.
The ideal is what we're all trying to get to is 6.5.
Yeah, that's right.
In a great world, it doesn't happen. I shouldn't say in a great world. It doesn't normally happen that way. Like, I'm never really seen a guy. And actually, Gary gives him like high fives when he does have a 6.5 and he walks in for the first time, because that's like, that is the best soil sample out there what you could get in our area.
Yeah, that's right.
But normally that doesn't happen. So I guess what I'm getting to is yes, 50 to 80%, and 80%, you're really going to get more value.
Yeah.
So, but you definitely don't need to do 100%.
Yeah. And I think I'll clarify what Josh said is, I think you were talking about a first-time food plotter that took a soil sample. Yeah. You can get to 6.5. I got lots of plots that are 6.5, but most of them started at 5.2, right?
Yeah,
but it was
what I was trying to explain.
Yeah. So I didn't want you to discourage. Is like, no matter what you do and how much lime you add, you'll never get to 6.5, because you can. But what Josh was referring to there is the new guy who walks in and says, "Hey, what's this soil sample report me? It's my first time," and you look at it and it's 6.5. Well, wow, man, that's awesome.
We are very jealous of that.
That's right. But it's absolutely 100%. Most all my plots, they're 6.5 every year now. And I was hunting on strip mine ground, poor soil that I built up, and it took years and years, but you can absolutely get to it. It just, the lower the pH is, the more years it's going to take you to get there, and so my whole point of the lime was understanding that lime a little bit and what you need to do. And that I encourage you to bite the bullet, and don't kick the can down the road, spread what it says. If you're using Pell lime, go 80% at least, or 50 to 80. I've always done 80, and that's worked very well for me. and just do whatever it says. If it says, it's recommending 1,000 pounds of ag lime, put 800 pounds of Pell lime on, and don't cut any corners. And I used to, so I get it. That's your first, okay, what's the big difference if I put 1,500 pounds instead of 3,000 pounds on here? Well, you're just literally kicking the can down the road. You're going to add it eventually if you want to get that pH to that 6.5.
Yeah, I guess I was thinking there, you're kind of like more in the maintenance program of your food
That's
plots.
right.
You went through the first X amount of years of the soil building. And then once you get this, and that's back to the soil samples, why you keep taking soil samples each year is basically now you're at the maintenance process of your food plots.
That's
but
right.
First years are the more expensive years of the soil building, keeping your fertility, building your fertility, and now it's just maintaining your fertility.
Yeah, that is an awesome point, Chuck. I'm glad you brought that up, because that is something we should have pointed out right away. Because if a guy's looking at this for the first time and thinking he has to spread 3,000 pounds of lime every year to have a food plot, he might bail. And you made a great point, is once you get your plot,
get better.
it gets better. And that's why I'm saying is like, get it better as fast as you can, because once you get to that 6.5, you're in that maintenance. And man, I go some plots where I don't need to add any lime for 4 or 5 years. And when I do, it's maybe 500 pounds. It's not ever the 3,000 pounds, and it's years down the road. Now if you have real poor H, it might take you 2-3 years of a bunch of lime to get it where you need to. But once you do, man, you're exactly right. It's not near as expensive. You're going to spend the money eventually if your goal is to get to that 6.5 and be able to plant whatever you want. But that's a really, really good point. I'm glad that you brought it up, because guys will freak out and say, well, I am not spending, hundreds and hundreds of dollars on lime every year just to have a food plot. But if you get your pH where it's at, then you get in that maintenance, and it's not near as difficult or as expensive. In many years, you won't have to add any lime at all.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. So good. Yeah. Thank you for bringing that up, because guys are probably sitting there, if they're listening to this and they've never done one before, and they're like, man, they want me to plant, spread 3,000 pounds of lime every year. That's crazy. So really good point. So enough about the lime. What I wanted to talk about next was explaining the fertilizer recommendations. And you touched on this a little bit earlier. When you get our results back, and I get this question a lot, there might be 4 different combinations, that it has listed. And I've had guys say, do I have to put all these combinations? It might say, 10, 10, 10, and it might say 50 pounds per acre of 10, 10, 10, and 200 pounds per acre of 0.46.0, and 300 pounds per acre of 0.064, and I'm just throwing numbers out there. And then there might be another one that's like, okay, 10 pounds of 19. And what it's just trying to do is every store that you go to, like, Josh's store, they're going to have certain fertilizers in place. It's trying to give you different combinations that will work. You don't need to do all those combinations. It's just one combination of those different combinations that are on there. I hope I explained that and that makes sense, because that is confusing to guys sometimes. They think that they have to do all those combinations, and that's not the case. It's just one combination on there.
Yeah, I think you explained that right. I think what the lab is doing is just trying to give you other options, so they know that the ag dealers don't carry every single one of those. Yeah. So that they're trying to give you the options of what you do need or what you can get.
Yeah. Yeah, that's 100% accurate. So now let's get to the part where I see this is the biggest thing all the time, where a guy's like, I can't find any ag stores around that have what the recommendation was, and it's we'll say it's 3400. I can't find anywhere around that has that. Okay. And I don't know if you remember in the early days when I'd bring in all my soil samples and I'd sit them by Gary and we'd go through. And the point is probably no ag store is going to have everything that maybe is on maybe they will if you're just doing one food plot. But if, I'm planting, 20 different food plots, 30 different food plots, I guarantee there's going to be a recommendation that you're not going to have. But what I tell guys is get close, right? Get close. Well, and what you need to understand, well, let me start with first, and you talked about this earlier. If it says, hey, you need 200 pounds of 10, 10, 10. Well, 19 is the exact same thing. It's just, I don't know if I say the right word, more concentrated, stronger. So like yes. You would, so instead of 200 pounds of 10-10-10, you'd only need 100 pounds of 19-19-19 because it's twice as much, right? And hopefully I explained that right. But so there's a way that you can do it. The other thing, like let's say, it called for 0060, right? And the only thing in your store was 5045. Well, that's close, right? That might be as close as you get, and you have to up it a little bit, right? If it called for, 50 pounds of that, you might throw on 75 pounds, and again, I'm not getting the calculator out and figuring it all out. But what I'm telling you is, a lot of guys will think sometimes if it says, but it says 0 in that nitrogen, and adding any nitrogen at all would be bad. Adding a little nitrogen is not going to hurt your food plot, right? And so I don't get hung
as low as nitrogen as you can.
That's right. Get it as close as what you possibly can, and generally
we've been running into a lot of guys are like an 0.2626.
Yeah.
We don't always have that in stock, so we suggest a 5-20-20.
Yeah.
And you bump it up a little bit to get your 6% of your 20-20. But that nitrogen is not going to hurt that. And it's normally like a clover plot that is recommending that, an established clover plot.
That's right.
But yeah, so I mean, you just kind of got to be a little, I wouldn't say all creative, but I mean, your feed, your ag dealer should be able to coach you through a little bit. But if not,
that's right.
Magna can definitely coach you through it.
Yeah, and I'm to the point now, where I, at first, like I'd come and Gary, your guy that works for you, we'd sit down and we'd go through all of it and we'd figure it out. And there was a lot of math. Now I call you and say, hey, what do you have in stock? You tell me. And then I've done it long enough that I can go figure out, all right, I need this much of 19-19-19, and I'm not bugging Gary with 30 different soil samples that we're having to spend 2 hours to go through and figure out, what all the translations will be for what
make an appointment with us.
I know. I used to say, hey, I'm coming. Gary's probably rolling his eyes like, hey, I hope there's no customers that day. So, but yeah, so I think, that kind of explains the fertilizer end of it. And that's why I tell guys, that's the other important part of getting a laboratory soil sample. And I know I touched on this already, but without a laboratory soil sample, I see a lot of guys say, just 19-19-19. And listen, it's not going to hurt, 19-19-19 is going to help, but you might be wasting your money, right? You don't know that, and you're not getting exactly what you need to really make that food plot as, as successful as what it can be, and a laboratory soil sample is going to take the guesswork out of it. Yeah. Okay. So, we're winding down here. I just, the last thing, I wanted to touch one more time is we've already, and we're not going to beat a dead horse, but like we said in the beginning, there's a reason we have it listed at $7.95. We know we're going to sell a lot of soil sample. We're the lowest out there. And it's a great lab test. It's as good as anybody else has out there, but it's important for us and your success to take a soil sample, right? We want you to be successful. That's why we're pricing it where it's at, because we want you to use our soil samples, but mainly we want you to go out and take a soil sample, that you take the guesswork out. That way, when you plant, Magnet Outdoor seeds, that you're given that every chance you can to grow and establish as well as it possibly can. So I don't know if you want to say anything else about that. We beat that, pretty good, but I just want to emphasize that's why ours are priced so low. It's just as good as anybody else out there. It's as good as those $15 ones, those $20 ones, those $10 ones. It's as good as all of them, but the reason we're not making money on them, we want you to get a soil sample.
Yeah, I just hope you, everybody out there just tries it at least once. Try it once, and I think you'll understand and be very happy with the results.
That's right. That's right. So we have a, I do a question. I take at least one or two questions every podcast, and I had a few questions this week, but I'm just going to take one because it was soil sample related, and we've actually already answered it. So we're just going to take a quick break, Josh. Thank a couple of our sponsors. We'll be right back, and we're going to take a question here from Tim in Maryland.
There's nothing more I love than chasing big bucks, and one of the biggest game-changing products for me and making me more successful is Moultrie Mobile cellular trail cameras. Anybody knows big mature whitetail, especially in high-pressure states like Pennsylvania, they're not going to put up with much from humans. So the best thing we can do is stay out of the woods, stay out of that property when it gets close to hunting season, and the Moultrie Mobile cellular trail cameras have been a game changer for me. They have affordable plans, great cameras. I encourage you to check out the entire line at MoultrieMobile.com.
All right, Josh, we're back. So I have a question this week, and I had a bunch submitted, but this one was a soil sample one, and it was perfect for this one. And we've already answered it, but I like to recognize the listeners and stuff out there. So I'll say to guys, if you have a question, feel free to send it to me at jason@fielddaysmedia.com. Send me your question. We're happy. Usually we do 2 or 3 of these on the air, but I'm just going to do one today. And this is Tim from Maryland. He says, "Hey, Jason, thanks for the informative podcast. Been listening for years. I have a buddy who says that he never soil samples and his plots do great every year. Are soil samples really necessary?" I don't think we need to go through this again. It was just fitting, Tim. Hopefully you're listening, and hopefully we answered your question on this, because yes, tell your buddy that one, he has no idea if he's wasting money, what he's doing, all the things that we talked about. I don't care. I've been planting plots in the same plots for 18 years and I don't know my soil. I could sit here and guess, oh, I bet this is what it's going to come out and this will be the fertilizer, and I'm not even close. So I don't care what anybody says, how long they've been doing it. And they might say, well, man, my results are awesome. I have great results every year. Well, they might be able to be better, and you might be wasting a lot of money too. So that's, I'm not going to get back into it, Josh. I don't know if you want to say anything to Tim, but I think we've kind of already answered that question.
I mean, I think the easiest thing to say is directions for your land.
Yeah.
Stick with, Tim, just tell your buddy that. And I think that's what we've been saying for 20 years is it's the directions for your land. And, if you want to be better successful, then, I think you can always do it better with your soil.
That's 100%. So that was it, Josh. That's why I was guessing this would be about a 45-minute podcast. We're pushing an hour, and always goes a little bit longer. But I want to thank you, Josh, for going down this road with me. I'm excited to see where this all leads. I'm excited for Magnet Outdoors. The one thing Josh and I have both made the commitment to is customer support. You're going to be able to call. You're going to get Josh or I or one of our support guys during those office hours. So if you have questions, we encourage you to reach out. And like I said, we know there's a lot of food plot seeds out there, right? We know we're the new guy on the block. All we're asking is give it a shot. Plant some of ours side by side. We want to do those comparisons because we've done them. We've planted side by side with the competition for years and tweaked and got to where, hey, we feel ours is better, and so we just ask you to give it a shot. We appreciate it. We understand there's a lot of choices out there. So anybody who does buy the seed, we appreciate you. And I want to thank everybody for listening. And Josh, I want to thank you for being on the show today.
Thank you, Jason.
I'm sure I'll be having you back again sometime soon. So it's that time of year, man. We're in July, and man, you hopefully you're getting ready, for those plots. You've had the lime in the ground, but it's not too late. Get those soil samples, get it limed. It's not going to hurt, to get that in. Make sure you're using the right fertilizer, and it's go time when it comes to planting food plots. So Josh, we're going to sign off here. And once again, thank you all for listening. If you have a question for me, feel free to email that to me. You can reach out to me on the Facebook group, but you can email me at jason@fielddaysmedia.com. And thank you all for listening.
Thank you.